God's timing is never off, though from where we stand it can feel like heaven is silent, like the clock has stopped, and like prayers are piling up without answers. We often measure life in minutes, hours, and days, but God measures in seasons, in growth, in preparation, and in purpose. What feels late to us is right on schedule to Him, because He is not governed by our impatience or deadlines. He sees the end from the beginning and the middle in between, so when He allows us to wait, it is never wasted time. Waiting builds patience, strengthens faith, and reveals what we truly depend on. If everything happened instantly, we would never develop endurance. We would never learn to trust, and we would never see His hand working beyond our control. Sometimes God delays not because He is punishing us, but because He is positioning us. He is making sure that the pieces line up, that the right people are in place, that the environment is ready, and that we ourselves are mature enough to handle what He is about to give. Think of how often we have wanted something too soon, and if we had received it, it would have crushed us instead of blessed us. God's timing spares us from burdens we are not yet equipped to carry, and it protects us from doors that might have looked appealing, but would have led to disappointment. When the breakthrough seems delayed, it is not denial, it is divine orchestration, because God never shows up early and He never shows up late. He arrives at the exact moment His purpose demands. Our problem is that we confuse silence with absence, but silence is often preparation. Just as a seed grows unseen beneath the soil before it breaks through the surface, so God is working in the unseen long before we witness the manifestation. We might be restless, anxious, and tempted to take shortcuts, but shortcuts often lead to setbacks. If Abraham and Sarah had waited fully on God's timing, they would have avoided the pain that came with trying to rush His promise. But even in their mistakes, God proved that His timing was still intact, because what He promises cannot be canceled by human error. In our lives, we must come to the point where we trust that if it hasn't happened yet, it is because the season has not arrived, and when the season comes, nothing will be able to stop it. Sometimes He holds back because He knows we would give credit to ourselves or to others, but when He does it in His timing, there will be no question who deserves the glory. His timing teaches us dependence, it humbles our pride, and it shapes us into people who can carry the blessing without letting it destroy us. Think of Joseph, who was given a dream as a teenager, but had to wait through betrayal, slavery, and prison before stepping into the palace. If he had rushed the process, he would not have had the wisdom, the resilience, or the perspective to handle the responsibility of saving a nation. God's timing is a refining process, and though it feels uncomfortable, it is necessary. The delay is not a denial, it is development. And in that development, God is aligning everything so that when the promise comes, it will not just come, it will last. What you thought was a setback may actually be God's setup, because He is arranging things beyond what you can see. While you are pacing the floor wondering why it hasn't happened, God is working behind the curtain, building the stage, and preparing the spotlight for the right moment. You may not see progress with your eyes, but progress is being made in realms you cannot perceive. Every day you stay faithful, every prayer you whisper, every tear you shed is being collected by a God who does not waste a single moment. The challenge is not the wait itself, the challenge is how we wait. If we wait with frustration, we miss the lessons, but if we wait with expectation, we build faith that cannot be shaken. God's timing is never off, because His plan is woven into eternity, not just the temporary. He knows which connections you need, which opportunities will serve you, and which detours are necessary to build your testimony. We may want instant answers, but instant answers rarely build lasting character. The waiting seasons are where God molds us, purifies our motives, and strips away the things that would sabotage the promise. His timing creates alignment between His will and our readiness, because what is from God must be handled with maturity, wisdom, and humility. When you look back on seasons you thought were delays, you will realize they were divine setups, and you will see that if it had happened earlier, you would not have been ready, and if it had happened later, you would have missed your moment. God's timing is never off, and the same God who began the work is faithful to complete it, because he cannot lie and he cannot fail, and the moment he decides it is time, what looked impossible will suddenly become undeniable. Because his timing is always perfect, closed doors don't cancel God's plan, though in the moment they can feel like rejection, failure, or the end of the road. When a relationship ends, when an opportunity slips away, when the job we prayed for doesn't work out, our natural response is to assume something has gone wrong, that maybe we missed our chance or made a mistake that ruined God's purpose for us. But God is too intentional to let a single closed door derail what he designed before we were even born. A closed door is not a cancellation. It is a redirection, a divine not here, or not yet, that guides us closer to where we are supposed to be. Sometimes we confuse closed doors with punishment, but often they are protection, because God knows the outcome of the path we are trying to force. And out of love, he prevents us from walking into something that would have harmed us or delayed us even more. Closed doors are God's way of saying, I have something better prepared, even if what we see right now doesn't look like an upgrade. We must learn to stop interpreting no as rejection and start seeing it as redirection. Think about how many times you thought you needed something, only to look back later and thank God that he didn't let you have it. If every door we knocked on swung wide open, we would settle for good when God has destined us for great. Closed doors help us distinguish between our desires and God's will. And while our desires shift with emotions and circumstances, his will is steady, intentional, and eternal. When God closes a door, it is not a setback. It is a setup for something aligned with his bigger picture. We often see only the door in front of us, but he sees the hallway, the rooms ahead, and the opportunities beyond our sight. Closed doors are God's way of rerouting us, much like a GPS that redirects when you take a wrong turn. Not to cancel the destination, but to ensure you still arrive at it. What looks like a detour is actually divine direction. Consider the story of Paul, who tried to preach in Asia, but was blocked by the Holy Spirit, not because Paul was wrong for wanting to share the gospel, but because God had a different assignment for him in Macedonia. That closed door in Asia opened the way for an even greater move of God that Paul could not have orchestrated on his own. The same applies in our lives. We may feel frustrated when doors shut, but God is orchestrating connections, timing, and resources that are bigger than we can comprehend. Closed doors teach us to trust God's sovereignty rather than our own strategy. We can plan, we can prepare, and we can pursue. But when God says, no, it is not because he is withholding. It is because he is redirecting us to the place where his favor already resides. Closed doors also build resilience, because if every opportunity came easily, we would never learn persistence, faith, and dependence on him. Closed doors are classrooms where God trains our trust, teaching us to lean on his wisdom rather than our understanding. They remind us that his plan does not hinge on human approval or open invitations from people. If God wants you in a place, no person can keep you out. If he doesn't want you in a place, no amount of effort will force the door open. We waste energy banging on doors God has already shut, when in reality, he is trying to lead us to doors that will open with ease because they are ordained. Closed doors often reveal that we were aiming too low, settling for less, or chasing something beneath our true calling. They force us to lift our eyes higher, to stop clinging to what is comfortable, and to embrace the faith that what God has for us is greater than what we thought we lost. Even when we make mistakes and walk toward the wrong doors, God in his mercy can shut them to protect us from derailing our destiny. The enemy may try to use a closed door to discourage us, to whisper lies that we are forgotten or that God has abandoned us. But the truth is that every closed door is still under God's control. He is not finished when a door closes. He is simply unfolding the next chapter. Think of Joseph, whose brothers tried to cancel his dream by selling him into slavery. Potiphar's wife tried to cancel it with false accusations. And the prison bars looked like the final closed door. Yet every single one of those moments was leading him closer to the palace. Closed doors did not cancel Joseph's calling. They positioned him for it, because no force of hell can override what God has decreed. The same is true in your life. The job that rejected you, the friendship that ended, the opportunity that slipped away are not strong enough to cancel what God ordained. Closed doors strip away false options so that you won't waste your energy in the wrong places, and they point you toward what is truly yours. If one door closes, it is because God is already opening another, often bigger and better than the one you thought you needed. His plan is not fragile. It does not collapse with rejection, and it does not expire with delay. Every closed door is a reminder that your destiny is not in the hands of people. It is in the hands of God, and if He authored it, then no amount of opposition can erase it, no matter how many doors shut in your face. His purpose will always prevail. No one can block what God has already assigned, because when He speaks something over your life, it carries an authority that no person, no situation, no setback, and no enemy can override. People may try to stop you. Life may throw obstacles in your way. And even your own fears and insecurities may whisper that you are not enough. But God's assignment comes with His power, and His power cannot be canceled by human interference. Too often we give people more power than they actually have, believing that their rejection, their criticism, or their betrayal has the ability to derail us. But they are not the author of our story. They are simply characters within it. When God assigns something to you, it comes sealed with His promise, and nothing anyone does can snatch that away. Think of David, who was anointed king as a young shepherd boy. He had no experience, no status, and no qualifications by human standards. But what God had already assigned to him could not be stopped by Saul's jealousy, by years of hiding in caves, or by armies rising against him. People tried to kill him, circumstances tried to crush him, but the throne was reserved for him and no one else. And at the appointed time he stepped into it, because no force on earth could block what heaven had decreed. The same is true in your life, because when God assigns a door for you to walk through, it may take longer than you expect, but it will not be closed to you forever. Someone else may walk past it. Someone else may try to claim it. But if it was assigned to you, it has your name on it, and no one else can take what God has prepared. Sometimes it feels like people have the power to block us, like the boss who overlooks us, the friend who betrays us, or the family member who doubts us. But their actions are only temporary delays, not permanent denials. God can even use those very people to push us closer to our assignment, because what they meant for harm, He can turn for good. Look at Joseph, who was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and thrown into prison, all by people who thought they were ending his dream. But what they didn't realize was that every step they took to block him was actually leading him closer to his assignment. The pit could not block him. Potiphar's wife could not block him. The prison could not block him, because God had already assigned the palace to him. What was meant to break him built him, and what was meant to stop him positioned him. We need to remind ourselves that opposition is not stronger than God's ordination. The enemy may try to discourage you, but he cannot dismantle what God has already put in place. He may try to delay it, distract you, or make you doubt it, but he cannot destroy it. God's word never returns void, and if he said it, it will come to pass regardless of who comes against it. That's why we don't need to live in fear of people's opinions, because their approval is not what secures our destiny. God's assignment is not dependent on popularity, on connections, or on being chosen by people. It is dependent on the one who chose you before you were even born. When he puts his hand on your life, he equips you with everything you need to accomplish the task, and even the opposition becomes part of the process. Sometimes the very people who try to block you are the ones God uses to prepare you. The criticism sharpens you. The rejection strengthens you. The betrayal teaches you resilience. And the closed doors push you to rely on God more than ever. Far from blocking you, these experiences build you into the kind of person who can carry the weight of the assignment. No one can block what God has assigned. Not because opposition doesn't exist, but because God's sovereignty is greater than opposition. Even when people try to push you out, He has a way of pulling you back in. Even when systems seem stacked against you, He has a way of making room for you. Even when opportunities look gone, He has a way of resurrecting them at just the right moment. God's assignments are unstoppable because they are woven into His eternal plan, and nothing on earth can tear apart what He has already aligned. The enemy knows he cannot take away what God has assigned, so his only tactic is to make you doubt it, to make you quit before it comes to pass. But if you keep standing, keep trusting, and keep walking by faith, you will see that what God assigned is immovable, unshakable, and inevitable. Every weapon formed against you may rise, but it will not prosper. Because the assignment is not just on you, it is in you, and it carries the weight of God's authority. People may overlook you, but they cannot overturn what God has ordained. Circumstances may shift, but they cannot cancel what God has sealed. When it feels like everything is against you, remember that God is for you, and if He is for you, nothing and no one has the power to block what He has already assigned. Your effort matters, but grace delivers, because while God calls us to be faithful, diligent, and committed in what He has placed in our hands, the ultimate outcome is never the result of our strength alone, but of His divine favor. Effort is what we can do. Grace is what only God can do. And the two work together to bring His purpose to completion. Too often we lean entirely on one or the other. Some people work tirelessly, thinking their performance alone will secure the promise, while others sit back passively, expecting God to do everything without their participation. The truth is, both are necessary. Your obedience, discipline, and perseverance matter, but without God's grace, even your greatest effort will fall short. Grace takes your ordinary effort and breathes extraordinary results into it, multiplying what you could never achieve on your own. Think about Peter fishing all night and catching nothing. His effort was real, his skills were sharp, and his experience was proven. But without grace, his nets stayed empty. The moment Jesus stepped into his boat and told him to cast the nets again, the same effort combined with divine instruction produced an overflow so great the nets began to break. The difference wasn't harder work, it was grace, and that is the same difference in our lives. You may be grinding, hustling, and pushing with everything you've got, but until grace gets involved, the harvest won't come. Yet grace doesn't excuse laziness, because Peter still had to row out again, still had to drop the nets, and still had to put in the work. Effort prepared the ground, but grace delivered the breakthrough. This tension between our effort and God's grace protects us from two extremes, pride and passivity. If everything depended only on effort, we would boast in our own ability and take credit for every victory. If everything depended only on grace, we would become stagnant, waiting idly for blessings to fall into our lap without cultivating the character to carry them. God designed it so that effort keeps us responsible and grace keeps us humble. Your effort shows God your faith, but grace shows you His power. Even Paul said he worked harder than anyone else, but then quickly added, "Yet not I, but the grace of God that was with me." That's the balance Paul poured himself out. But he knew the real strength behind his work was not his own. It was God's grace sustaining and empowering him. When you give your best effort, you position yourself under the flow of grace. But it is grace that opens doors you could never have forced open. It is grace that places you in rooms you weren't qualified to enter. It is grace that promotes you when others overlooked you. And it is grace that turns your little into much. Effort without grace leads to exhaustion. Grace without effort leads to stagnation. but together they create fruitfulness. In your studies, your career, your relationships, your calling, your part is to be faithful in what God has given you, to plant, to water, to show up consistently, but only God can make things grow. You cannot make the rain fall. You cannot control the timing of the harvest, but you can till the ground and keep the soil ready so that when grace comes, you are prepared to receive it. Effort matters because it reveals your trust in God's assignment, but grace delivers because it ensures that the results go beyond human ability. This truth is liberating because it means you don't have to live under the crushing weight of self-sufficiency. You don't have to manipulate outcomes, compete endlessly, or strive in anxiety trying to make everything happen by yourself. You are called to give your best, but you can rest knowing that God's grace covers the gaps, redeems the mistakes, and accelerates the outcomes. Sometimes we think if we just try harder, if we just push more, things will happen, but effort alone cannot unlock destiny. Grace takes effort further than it could ever go on its own. Grace delivers what effort cannot reach. You may be in a season where you feel like your effort is not producing results. Like you are sowing and sowing without seeing the harvest, but don't stop. Keep showing up, keep planning, keep serving, because grace knows when to release the increase. At the right time, all the effort you thought was wasted will be multiplied by His hand. Grace never ignores effort, it amplifies it. And even when your effort falls short, when you are weak, tired, or feel like you don't have enough, grace steps in as the sufficiency that carries you forward. That's why no one can ever boast as though they made it all happen on their own, because every success story has God's grace written all over it. Your effort matters because it proves your commitment and responsibility, but grace delivers because it ensures that the outcome aligns with God's will, His timing, and His glory. Destiny doesn't require chasing, because what God has already written for your life will never pass you by, and no amount of striving, competing, or comparing can bring it any closer than God has appointed it to arrive. We live in a culture that glorifies the chase, chasing success, chasing recognition, chasing opportunities, chasing people. Yet the truth of destiny is that it does not need to be chased, it needs to be trusted. When something is ordained by God, it has already been assigned to you, sealed with His authority, and preserved in His timing. You don't have to beg for it, manipulate for it, or wear yourself out trying to force it, because destiny has a way of finding you when you walk in obedience and faith. Look at David, who wasn't in the palace campaigning to be king. He was in the fields tending sheep, doing what seemed small and unnoticed. He wasn't chasing destiny. Destiny came looking for him when the prophet showed up with oil in his hand. That moment reminds us that you don't have to chase positions, people, or platforms, because if it is God's will, it will find you even in hidden places. The same truth is seen in Ruth, who was gleaning in the fields, not chasing a wealthy man, not orchestrating her future, but simply being faithful in the season she was in. And destiny met her in the form of Boaz, aligning her life with a lineage that would lead to the birth of kings. When you chase destiny, you exhaust yourself trying to control outcomes that were never meant to be controlled by human effort. But when you trust destiny, you can walk in peace, knowing that what is yours cannot be stolen, delayed, or denied. Chasing creates anxiety because it comes from a fear of missing out, a belief that if you don't run after it, you'll lose it. But destiny is not fragile. It cannot slip through your fingers because it is anchored by God's sovereignty. You don't have to chase opportunities because opportunities that belong to you are already on a collision course with your path. You don't have to chase relationships because the people meant to be in your life will align with your journey without manipulation. You don't have to chase validation because God's approval is greater than human applause, and His assignment is not dependent on their recognition. Destiny doesn't require chasing, it requires faith, patience, and alignment. Your responsibility is not to run after the future, but to steward the present faithfully, because the way you handle today positions you for tomorrow. Joseph did not chase his dream into Pharaoh's palace. He simply remained faithful in Potiphar's house, in the prison, and in every season in between, and destiny elevated him at the right time. That's the beauty of walking with God. He knows how to find you wherever you are. The world teaches you to chase after things, but the kingdom teaches you to seek first the presence of God, and everything else will follow. Chasing destiny places the burden on your shoulders, but trusting destiny places the weight on God's shoulders, and his shoulders are strong enough to carry it. Chasing says, I must make it happen, but faith says, if God spoke it, he will bring it to pass. When you stop chasing, you start resting in the truth that destiny cannot miss its appointment with you. Sometimes the chase is what delays people, because in running after what they think they need, they miss what God has actually prepared. The harder you chase, the more you risk forcing doors that God has closed or settling for something beneath your calling. But when you stand still and trust, you allow the right doors to open at the right time. Destiny doesn't require chasing, because it is not earned, it is received. It is not a prize for those who run the fastest. It is a gift from the one who knows the path you were designed to walk. That doesn't mean you sit back passively doing nothing. It means you walk in obedience, do what God has called you to today, and let him orchestrate the moments that lead you into tomorrow. Chasing destiny is like chasing the wind. You exhaust yourself, but never grasp it fully. Trusting destiny is like planting seeds. You may not see the harvest immediately, but you can be certain it will grow in season. When you stop chasing, you start trusting that God knows how to send the right people, the right opportunities, the right breakthroughs, and the right timing into your life without you having to compromise your peace to obtain it. Destiny has your name on it, and what has your name on it will never fit someone else, no matter how hard they try to take it. You don't need to chase, because destiny will recognize you when the time comes. The anointing on your life, the calling on your spirit, the grace on your steps, all of it testifies that you are already chosen, and what is chosen cannot be erased. Destiny doesn't require chasing, because you are not the author of your story. God is. And when he writes it, he ensures that every chapter leads you exactly where you are supposed to be. Peace is the proof of God's plan, because when something is truly from him, it carries a stillness and assurance that cannot be manufactured by circumstances or shaken by uncertainty. Peace is not the absence of problems, but the presence of confidence that even in the midst of storms, God is in control and his hand is guiding every step. Many times we try to measure whether something is right for us by how it looks on the outside. Does it seem successful? Does it make sense? Does it line up with what others expect? But appearances can be deceiving, while peace is never counterfeit. When God is leading you, his plan is accompanied by a deep inner calm that surpasses understanding, a confirmation that quiets the noise of doubt and settles your spirit even when logic cannot explain it. You may not know every detail of the journey, but you know without a shadow of a doubt that you are in the right place at the right time, because peace is resting on your decision. On the other hand, when something is not aligned with God's plan, it often carries confusion, restlessness, and unease. No matter how appealing it may look, or how hard you try to force it to work, there is a lack of peace that becomes a warning sign in your spirit. God is not the author of confusion, and he does not lead through constant turmoil. So when his hand is on something, the evidence is peace. Peace does not mean everything will be easy, but it means that even when challenges arise, you are not consumed by fear or regret, because your spirit knows this is the path he has chosen. Peace is the anchor that holds you steady when everything around you is shifting, and it is the compass that directs you when the way ahead seems unclear. Think about Jesus sleeping in the boat while the storm raged around him. The disciples were panicking, but he was at rest. because peace is rooted not in the absence of waves, but in the presence of trust. When your steps are ordered by God, that same peace will guard you, enabling you to stand firm in the middle of chaos, because you are confident that His plan is unfolding, even if you cannot see the full picture yet. Too often we chase opportunities that glitter, but do not give peace. And then we wonder why we feel drained, anxious, or unsettled after obtaining them. Peace is God's way of protecting you from paths that may look good, but are not good for you. His peace is like a divine filter that separates what is temporary from what is eternal, what is self-driven from what is spirit-led. That is why you can be in a situation that looks small, overlooked, or unimpressive to others, yet feel a profound peace that assures you this is exactly where you are supposed to be. Peace is not about the size of the platform. It is about the certainty of God's presence. Even when you face decisions, peace will confirm God's plan in ways that external signs cannot. Doors may open, opportunities may come, but not every open door is from God. The real test is not simply whether the door opens, but whether your spirit has peace about walking through it. When the peace of God rules in your heart, you can discern between distractions that pull you away and directions that lead you forward. Peace is the mark of His plan because His Spirit lives within you. And the Spirit produces peace as evidence of alignment with God's will. You do not have to chase endless confirmations from people when you already have the inner witness of peace that surpasses all understanding. Peace is God's language of assurance, telling you, this is the way, walk in it. Even when the path demands sacrifice, peace will keep you grounded. Even when it stretches your faith, peace will hold you steady. Even when you cannot see the outcome, peace will remind you that God already has it covered. Peace is the companion of obedience, because when you surrender to God's plan, you release the burden of trying to control everything, and in exchange, He fills you with peace. The reason peace is the proof of God's plan is that His plan is never meant to drain you with constant fear or confusion. It is meant to grow you in trust, strengthen you in faith, and bring glory to Him. Whenever you find yourself striving, forcing, or exhausting yourself just to make something work, it may be a sign that you are pushing outside His plan. But when you are walking in His will, even when it is hard work, there will be a peace that sustains you because you are flowing with His grace instead of fighting against it. Peace is the signal that God is in it. And when you have His peace, you do not have to justify it to anyone else because your spirit knows. The world cannot give this kind of peace, and the world cannot take it away because it does not come from circumstances. It comes from the certainty of God's presence and His purpose over your life.